Some have criticized public school administrators for closing public schools, while others have defended their actions in the face of an unprecedented pandemic, times historically associated with fear, confusion, and despair. However, as reiterated during what has popularly been referred to during the pandemic as the DACA decision, or Department of Homeland Security versus Regents of the University of California, it is a foundational principle of administrative law that judicial review of agency action is limited to the grounds that the agency invoked when it took the action. And so the operative question, as a matter of law, is exactly what was known by public school officials at the time. And as the late New York Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan had said, you are entitled to your opinion. However, you are not entitled to your own facts. And as many say, science should never be political. So let's now examine the facts, just the facts, regarding the closing of public schools in the community of Arlington, Virginia, the most educated community in the Commonwealth of Virginia. On March 13th, 2020, it was announced that Arlington Public Schools, the 13th largest public school division and the second best public school district in the Commonwealth of Virginia, from among 132 public school divisions, according to Niche, would be closing starting Monday. And at that time, it was their announced expectation, their plan, that they expected to remain closed only through the end of spring break in April. This announcement had preceded the announcement 2 days later by the Virginia Governor Ralph Northam, MD, the nation's only physician serving as a state governor and former Army surgeon, when the total of COVID-19 reported cases in the entire nation barely exceeded 3,000. There had been 19 times more cases reported by late February in China, and with only a total of 45 cases in the entire state of Virginia, with only one reported fatality. Closing of an entire state. Closing of public schools. Before an unprecedented pandemic in July 2019, Cynthia Johnson, a Negro woman, a former teacher and a principal, who had been recognized as Principal of the Year at Patrick Henry Elementary School in 1999, and Teacher of the Year at Thomas Jefferson Middle School in 1992, had succeeded former Superintendent Dr. Patrick Murphy, and had been elevated from her former post as the Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. And in March 2020, it was Ms. Johnson who had closed the doors to in-person instruction while serving as interim superintendent, preempting even the decision of the nation's only physician serving as a state governor during the pandemic, Governor Northam, who had said he was banning all events involving over 100 people in Virginia after the first Virginia coronavirus-related death was reported on Saturday, March 14th. Whether even acting in an abundance of caution, the locking down of an entire state of 8.6 million on account of only 45 cases of COVID-19, less people than you could put on a bus, and only one fatality might be a question for another time, another tribunal, another inquiry. However, focused only upon the facts regarding the Arlington Public Schools, which were closed and has been attributed to Virginia being ranked 6th in the nation for losses in reading and math aptitude, and immediately causing students in Arlington Public Schools to miss the opportunity to be administered the PSAT for qualification for the National Merit Scholarship in mid-autumn. Money for school around October 2020, when the students' chances had actually doubled to earn that coveted scholarship and make a dream come true, because only half of the over 2 million high school sophomores who were usually sitting for that test had taken the chance to take that test. Let us recall now the legal rule. It is a foundational principle of administrative law that judicial review of agency action, it is limited to the grounds that the agency invoked when it took the action. And at least in court, according to Marbury v. Madison, it is the emphatic duty of the judicial department to say what the law is. So now, how much did the school board in Arlington Public Schools and the superintendent know, and when did they know it? Some might suggest that it was their duty to close the public schools for the safety of the children and the community. And at least the Supreme Court has laid down the bright line rule that means of knowledge with the duty of using them are in equity equivalent to knowledge itself, a rule of law that was decided in 1872 in the case Cordova v. Hood, and simply that imposes a heightened sense of duty to perform due diligence, especially for those entrusted in what attorneys describe as a fiduciary relationship as custodians, placing themselves out to the public and world as experts engaged in, at least this case, regarding matters of education. And certainly at least those who had been to grammar school, which we must assume all educators have, and especially those educators engaged in the instruction of the sciences of biology, like Arlington Public School Board member Mary Cadera, elected in 2021, should know that viral particles are by far the most abundant biological entities on our planet, and notwithstanding the oft-repeated words lifted from the context most often unstated, but attributed to Nobel laureate Dr. Joshua Lederberg, that the single biggest threat to man's continued dominance on the planet is the virus. The empirical fact is that as of 2012, with the emergence of MERS on the Arabian Peninsula, there were only a total of 219 viruses that were actually harmful to mankind, with very little threat of spillover. And any educator who had completed basic statistics and probability in high school should be intimately acquainted with the law of large numbers, which would have made the emergence of yet another threat from viruses, especially coronaviruses like MERS and SARS, rather remote. Or do educators in the community, with the most government scientists, rank 14th for holders of graduate degrees, reject that rather simple and rudimentary mathematical and scientific proposition? Obviously, on all empirical evidence they do, because based upon that knowledge, they still yet had decided before the nation's only position serving as a state governor to close the doors to in-person instruction in public schools beginning on March 14, 2020, and not beginning to reopen the doors to in-person instruction until a year later, on March 15, 2021, the passing of the first anniversary of the pandemic declaration. And those are simply the facts, just the facts, regardless of anyone's personal opinion. This message was approved by Major Mike Webb, honest.